This is a Rattle and Hum Sports podcast for Sunday, October the 27th. I'm Bryan Houston. The Dallas Cowboys managed to create ways to lose football games that you couldn't dream up if you had a year to think about it. They lose to the Detroit Lions 31-30 in a ball game where they had 10-point leads two different times in the fourth quarter, and yet could not stop the Lions going 80 yards in 50 seconds or so with no timeouts at the end of the ball game. With us to try to analyze this is my good friend Matthew Postins, who of course contributes for the Rattle and Hum Sports covering the Cowboys. And Matthew, I'm just going to sit back and listen and let you do this.
It's going to be a very boring podcast, but that's good.
It's absolutely unfathomable that a team, number one, has a +4 turnover margin, has the lead by 6 with 50 seconds to go, and the other team has no timeouts, and yet can lose a football game like that. And when it gets right down to it, they're just not good enough.
Yeah, this is the second time in recent memory a team that has turned the ball over 4 times actually won a football game. It's just one of the strangest games I've ever seen at any level. I mean, you talked about how the Cowboys find creative ways to lose, and this might be the most creative way you could possibly imagine. To be in control of the football game until the very last minute of the game, and then the other team, which just seems to have everything working against them in terms of clock and in terms of yardage and in terms of timeouts, they still find a way to get down the field and score to win the game. It's one of those head-scratching losses, and it could be a season turner, too. I mean, when you look at this team and we look back at this season at the end of the year, this could be the game we all look at and say, this is the game that turned the season one way or the other.
You know, and I have so many conflicting thoughts about this game because, on the one hand, you know, it's real easy to sit here and rip this Dallas defense for giving up some 620-plus offensive yards, for allowing Megatron to have a career day today, over, you know, what was it, almost 300 yards receiving.
It was actually 329 yards receiving.
Thank you. Okay. Well, then that makes it even. So is that the NFL record now?
I think that might actually be the NFL record. I'd have to check.
I know it was close.
The NFL record, it's pretty close.
Well, and when you think about all of that and you say, all you can say is, this defense is awful, and yet you have to step back, and when you look at what the Cowboys had on the field for that last drive in terms of personnel, that team looked like an NAIA defense. I mean, when you look at the people that were on the field, I mean, you literally had, 3 people on the field who were starting when this season began?
I think that's right. You had Carter out there, you had Lee out there, you had Hatcher out there, and I don't think Durant was out there because I think they were in a nickel at one point. But you look at that safety position, they had a guy who was on the practice squad 2 days ago who they had to call up, who was on one side because Barry Church was hurt, and then Jeff Heath, the rookie, who played, I thought, a solid game, considering it was his first NFL start, was on the other side. But that's really not even the play that burned them. The play that burned them was actually that play down the side of the field on that last drive where they got it to Chris Durham on a go route. And Brian Billick made a good point toward the latter part of the broadcast. You don't usually get go routes like that when you're playing, you know, that type of prevent coverage. The Lions managed to find a way to get Durham behind the corner and the safety, and he made a nice catch, and that kind of set up the final sequence of events. But, yeah, this defense all the way across is decimated. There were 4 starters. Carr was out there as well. So 4 guys who started the season as starters were on the field there in the final minute of that game. It's not optimum, but, you know, the Cowboys are going to say, well, if you're out there and you got a uniform on, you got to make the play. And there's a certain validity to that.
Yeah, and then I have to go back, though, to be fair. You can still be pretty critical of this defense because even back in the early part of the season, what is this, the 4th time now they've given up 400-plus yards passing?
Yes, this is the 4th time, and they're 1-3 in those games. It's hard to believe they beat the Giants with Eli having as great a game as he had during opening night. But, you know, this is a problem. You can't sugarcoat it at this point. This is a problem. This Cowboys team has a serious problem defending the pass, and I don't think it's so much the pass rush I think it's the secondary. I think it's the back seven. We saw a lot of plays going up the middle of the field, like we saw a few weeks ago when the Cowboys were giving up plays down the middle of the field. I don't know what the difference is between this game and the two previous games against Philadelphia and Washington when they did a good job at defending the middle of the field and not giving up big plays. But there's some obvious issues in the back seven of that defense that they've got to address because they're simply giving up too many passing yards. And when the offense plays reasonably well, it wasn't a great day for the offense, but they did enough to win the football game. They scored 30 points. That should be enough to win you a football game in the NFL.
And then let's talk about the offense, because a lot of people, and I've already listened to some of the analysts here at the end of the ball game, that believe that maybe the biggest play of the ball game came with 1:07 left in the game. Cowboys were leading at 30-20. Well, getting ready to lead at 30-24. Actually, it was 27-24 at that time. Mm-hmm. They've got to try to get a first down. They're trying to eat up as much clock as possible. Lions have used all their timeouts, and Tyron Smith gets caught holding. Tyron Smith gets caught holding. That stops the clock with 1:07 to play. Instead of just hitting a knee, which is one train of thought, instead of trying to run the football, why don't you just take a knee and let the clock run as much as you can? But Smith gets called for holding. That stops the clock. They kick the field goal, the Cowboys do. Granted, it gives them a 6-point lead, but the Lions get the ball with 1:02 left in the game, and they've been going up and down the field almost unstopped all day.
Yeah, you could look at that a lot of different ways. I think most coaches, the logic there is going to be you don't want to take the knee on third down because even though you are going to chew time off the clock and you are going to kick the field goal, first of all, it's not necessarily a high percentage field goal, even though Dan Bailey did make it. Second of all, you're still leaving 35, 40 seconds. I think the mentality at that point, if you're the coach, is to find a way to get the first down and move the chains. That being said, that was a huge penalty because it stopped the clock. And you could see Jason Garrett on the sideline after they made the call going to the officials and saying, hey, is the clock going to run or not? And they said no, because the clock does not run on a defensive penalty. So, even if, Tanner gets outside, gets the yardage, doesn't get the first down, and Tyron Smith doesn't commit the penalty, you're still looking at time on the clock. You're still looking at a field goal. You're still looking at an opportunity for the Lions to try and win the game. It's just less time. I don't really have a problem with the run play in that situation because I'd rather move the chains and then be able to take the knee and end the game. But I do have a problem with the fact that this team, by and large, doesn't really block very well in the run game, especially at times when it really needs to run the football, like a situation such as this. They're just not a very good run-blocking team, and that works against them when they're trying to salt away games like this.
Well, and then we get to other issues. And again, the running play or the play call is not the problem. The penalty was the problem. And you think about the fact that the Detroit could have ended up with the football with no timeouts, trailing by 6, but only maybe 30 seconds on the clock as opposed to 55 seconds on the clock. Might have made all the difference in the world.
Absolutely, it very well could have.
That being here or there, several things that come to mind in this ball game. One, I watched Matthew Stafford repeatedly feed the beast. Okay, I watched him, and the beast is two people. It was Reggie Bush, and of course it was Calvin Johnson. And everybody knows that Calvin Johnson is the greatest wide receiver in the NFL, and everybody knows that Calvin Johnson is going to draw double and triple coverage, and yet Matthew Stafford continued to throw the football to him. Conversely, on the other side, the Cowboys, I think they targeted Des Bryant once in the first half. Mm-hmm. And therein lies, to me, a major problem. Now, granted, Des Bryant's a nut job, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. Okay? but the bottom line is, the Lions are doing what good teams do. They put the ball in the hands of their playmakers. And the Cowboys only have two real playmakers, that being Jason Witten and Des Bryant. Did Witten catch a ball today?
He caught 2 for 15 yards.
Yeah, and boy, that's the most invisible day I think I've seen. In fact, I don't remember those 2 catches and can barely remember him ever even seeing a pass come his way. So and Bryant, caught 3?
He ended up with 3 catches for 72 yards, but he scored twice. And
Yeah.
that one score was just an incredible catch on his behalf.
And they didn't really go to him then until the fourth quarter.
Well, I think there were a couple of things at play. First of all, the Lions paid a lot of attention to both Witten and Bryant all day long. Witten was actually double teamed as much as Bryant was, which I think is part of the reason why Witten did not have the kind of day we would expect from him to have on a day like today. Conversely, the other thing for the Lions is you look at that receiving corps, and Calvin Johnson's really all they got. I mean, at least with the Cowboys, you have Terrence Williams, who's having a wonderful month of October right now. You've got
agreed.
You've got a few more weapons there.
But you understand what I'm saying here, though.
What you're saying. But if you're Tony Romo, do you want him to throw to Des Bryant if he's double covered?
I
personally don't, because Tony Romo's track record in that regard to me is worse than Matthew Stafford's.
I totally I understand the dilemma there, and Romo wants to keep the media off his back, and the Cowboy organization wants to keep the media off of Romo's back. I'm just saying, we're talking about a guy here in Dez who everybody says is Calvin Johnson reincarnated, and I watched Johnson today. I don't know what the difference is, but I just know that everybody knows that he's the only weapon they've got in the passing game, and he's got 14 catches for 329 yards today.
I think it says more about Calvin Johnson than it does about Des Bryant, frankly.
I guess it just is a very frustrating thing. That
and I think there might also be an element of trust there. I mean.
Yeah.
I think Matthew Stafford trusts Calvin Johnson in a way that maybe Tony Romo doesn't quite trust Des Bryant yet.
That's
and I'm
fair.
not saying Tony doesn't trust Des completely, but I think there's a level of trust there between Stafford and Johnson to where Stafford just knows, I'm just going to throw the football up, and Calvin Johnson's going to go find a way to get that. And I'm not sure that Romo has that trust in Bryant 100% just yet.
And you make a great point there, and that's a very fair point, and I agree with you on that completely. And you're absolutely right in that respect. And that may be you may have just put your finger on it. The very difference in these two players is that Matthew Stafford knows that when he throws the ball up, Calvin Johnson could have 5 guys on him, but Calvin Johnson's going to, 9 times out of 10 is going to outleap, outfight, whatever he's got to do, he's going to come down with the football. Mm-hmm. Dez, you're not even sure he's going to be in the right place a lot of times.
Yeah, I mean, Bryant's certainly getting a lot better, and he really fought off 2 guys to catch that 1 touchdown pass in the corner of the end zone today. And I think that's just the maturation. We talked about the whole Dez Megatron dynamic this week, and how the controversy really got kind of overblown. I mean, Bryant's just not there yet. He's a lot closer than he certainly was at this time last year in terms of being considered a top 3 receiver in this league, but he's just not quite there yet. You know what I mean?
All right, and then you talk about the trust factor, and then what we saw at the end of the ball game, after the Lions took the 1-point lead, and there were 11 seconds left in the game, and we're watching the sidelines, and Dez's head is exploding, and Jason Witten has had about all of it he can stand, and DeMarcus Ware is trying to keep them apart. And I just thought the whole thing was embarrassing. And at some point, Des Bryant's going to have to grow up. And I just thought that just kind of summarizes the whole problem there.
Yeah, I mean, without speculating too much about what happened, because I don't think we don't know for sure. They're still doing post-game, and I don't think Bryant's even spoken to the media yet, so I don't know that we know exactly what happened. But I think likely it was one of those situations where Bryant saw what happened on the field with the touchdown, saw the Lions take the lead, and I guess he just lost his mind, basically. And you saw Witten trying to be a veteran and trying to calm him down and let him know, hey, we still got time on the clock. We still have an opportunity to win this football game. And if that's the case, Bryant's got to start putting a lid on that. I mean, you cannot be a successful player in this league if you're going to go off every time something like this happens, especially if you play for the Dallas Cowboys, because it seems to happen every 2 weeks. You've got to show some maturity. And while Bryan has made great strides the last year and a half, we're still seeing him call for pass interference calls. we're still seeing him in the face of players on the sideline. We're still seeing him, asking, theoretically, why am I not getting the football? Why am I not getting the ball? Des Bryant's going to get his touches, and he's going to get his touchdowns. He's already got 8 touchdown catches this year. I mean, and he has to understand that he's going to be the most paid attention to player on the football field. And if he's not going to be able to grasp that, then, this could be a real issue moving forward. You don't want to overblow it because, things may very well be fine tomorrow. But, the fact that Jason Witten had to get in his face, the fact that DeMarcus Ware had to get between the two of them to try and calm them down, I think that says more about Des Bryant's temperament than anything else.
And then I have to tell you, I just got a tweet from one of my followers who says, Des had a right to chew on Tony Romo. He was awful in the first half. And my first response is, you're joking, right? You're going to say this is Romo's fault? What did you think of the way Romo played today?
It was a serviceable outing. I mean,
I thought he took a beating today. I thought he got punched so many times. It started to get just a little bit embarrassing for the offensive line.
Early on, he certainly got punched around, and then I think the offensive line finally figured out what Detroit was doing with their front four and got him a little more protection. I mean, he completed fewer than 50% of his passes, and I can't remember the last time that happened. But he threw 3 touchdowns, didn't throw any interceptions, didn't make any real mistakes. I mean, I have no problem with the way he played today. I mean, if you're going to sit there and ask if he could have done any more, I mean, maybe he could have completed a few more passes. But I thought overall he did a nice job of running the game. I don't really have any problem with anything he did today.
I thought Detroit's defense played pretty well today.
Mm-hmm. I thought they did too. I just think as the game wore on, I think the Cowboys kind of figured out what they were doing up front with the pass rush. The secondary did all right. I thought the Lions were pretty good overall today. But the Cowboys did enough to win this game offensively, no doubt.
All right, there are a couple of guys that deserve kudos even in this loss. One, well, actually, I guess 3. Sean Lee, first of all, was phenomenal today.
Yeah, he had another sensational outing, and, the 10th and 11th interceptions of his career, most interceptions for a linebacker in the NFL since the start of the 2010 season. It's a testament to his progress as a player and the investment the Cowboys have made in him with the contract extension that he's playing as well as he is. I mean, he really is the fulcrum of this whole defense right now. And if Sean Lee were to ever go down, you might as well just go ahead and pack the whole season because the Cowboys aren't going anywhere.
2 interceptions in the ball game too. So once again, not only is he all over the place, he had 7 tackles in the game. But got the 2 turnovers, 2 of the 4 turnovers. The guy he's all pro.
Yeah, I think he's definitely on his way. Certainly a Pro Bowler, no doubt. But all certainly a possibility.
Yeah. All right. And the other guy that's not going to get a lot of notice, but should, because he is money in the bank, is Dan Bailey, who today set a Cowboys record for most field goals over 50 yards, broke Rafael Septien's club record. And I mean, that's one of the things. There were a couple of times that the Cowboys take a real chance kicking those long field goals when you have a defense that has as much difficulty stopping people as Dallas does, to take the chance of missing a field goal and giving a team, great field position. And Dan Bailey comes up clutch every time, it seems like.
Yeah, this guy rarely misses. He's got one of the best percentages in terms of making field goals in NFL history right now. And granted, it's just his 3rd year in the league. But there are a few guys that are as accurate as he is right now in the NFL. When you look at the kicks he made today, had 2 53-yard field goals, had another 44-yarder. I mean, none of those kicks was easy for him today. And, he helped the Cowboys, boost their lead a couple of times. He helped them, keep drives from turning into nothing. This guy hasn't been to a Pro Bowl yet, but I think he should warrant consideration this year. Just the way he's playing right now. The Cowboys couldn't do without him.
All right, I've ranted enough about my issues. What thoughts do you have? What notes did you take? What things have we not covered that you want to bring up?
Well, I think we just have to go back and figure out what's going on with this defense. I mean, having covered the Buccaneers for 4 years and having been around them defensively, I've not seen, I didn't see any of those teams give up the kind of passing yards that this Cowboys defense is giving up. Certainly part of it is they're banged up. That's part of it. But, they did a good job of defending the pass last week, and they were banged up. There's a level of inconsistency in this team right now that I think everybody's just kind of used to. And I wonder if maybe that's background noise at this point. I wonder if, for not only those who follow the team, but also those who are around the team, I wonder if it's just, we're inconsistent, we're riding a roller coaster from week to week, and nobody's been able to figure out how to fix it. But I think that's a problem, too. And then again, let's circle back to the run game again. I mean, the way they run the football is just unacceptable. I don't care if they think Tony Romo is their best athlete and best player on the team. I don't care if they think he's his best avenue to success. The way this team runs the football is completely unacceptable. They were actually pretty well in balance today, but they ran the ball for about 50 yards. It's just, it's unacceptable in the NFL. You have to be able to run the football effectively to be successful, and this team has not been able to do it, say, for one game against St. Louis this year. And until they correct that problem, I'm very dubious as to whether or not they're going to do any better than 8-8 this year. And you know what? 8-8 might still get them in the playoffs.
Well, the sad thing about this thing is the Cowboys had a chance to go 5-3, and then looking at their schedule over the next 4 ball games, the Saints game is the one game where they're not going to be favored. All the other teams are 1-5. They're 1-6. I mean, very winnable ball games. They had a real chance to take this thing, and to get such an emotional win today on the road would have been huge. And now it's once again, take one step forward, one step back for Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, this was a day where they really could have opened themselves up a nice stretch. I mean, think about it. They were 3-5 at this time last year. Everybody had all sorts of questions about, where this team was headed. Here we are 8 weeks in, and they're 4-4. And if they're 5-3 and they win this game today, and they got a 2-game lead in the East, which they very likely would have, nobody's asking questions about the direction of this team because everybody's looking at the direction this team is going forward. Now they're 4-4. They're coming off another absolutely bone-crushing, horrible, ridiculous loss. And now all the questions this week going into the Minnesota game are going to be, what's the direction of this football team? Is this team any better than they were a year ago? Is this team any stronger than they were a year ago? An NFL team just cannot operate like that. I mean, you need to know what direction you're headed in, and when you're 4-4, you just don't know what direction you're headed in. Sure, they've improved by one win, over this time last year, but aside from that, Romo's playing better. He's making fewer mistakes. But the defense is wildly inconsistent. The running game isn't there. Des Bryant's yelling at people. It looks like it's going to be a tumultuous week around Valley Ranch.
And then it gets right back to what, when it's all said and done, you can say all you want to about all of these different things, but the bottom line is the personnel is just not there.
No, it's not. I mean, not where you would think it would be for an NFL team. It's, you go back to those drafts after the Bill Parcells era, those 3 drafts where they basically got nobody out of those 3 drafts. They have a lot of really good veteran players who've been in the league 10 or 12 years. They have some good young players that in a few years could really be something, like Travis Frederick and Terrence Williams. And you go back to last year, and Kyle Wilber starting to show us something. But then there's middle. There's no guys in the middle. There's not a lot of talent there in the middle, and that's kind of what we talked about at the beginning of the season. There's a big donut hole in the middle there of that mid-tier, 5, 6, 7-year veteran talent, because the Cowboys were unable to develop anybody from those 3 drafts. And I think that's part of the reason why there is so much inconsistency with this football team, because they're having to lean so heavily on younger players that are still learning the ins and outs of the NFL to some degree, and that's part of the reason why they're so inconsistent.
Well, and that's gone on for a really long time, so there's something consistent going on there, and we won't get into what that is. So, all right, Matthew, what's coming up in the next few days on Rattle and Hump Sports?
Well, naturally, we'll revisit the game with our 1st and 10 feature, start getting ready for the Vikings. Big week for the Cowboys coming off the loss. They've got to bounce back. They've got to win. They've got to beat the Vikings, a team that's in more disarray than I think any team in the NFL right now. Even though they do have Adrian Peterson running the football, this is a winnable game for the Cowboys, and they need to get it as they go into that Vikings game on Sunday night in a couple of weeks. So we'll be getting you ready for the Vikings and keeping you up to date on what is sure to be a fun week around Valley Ranch with Des Bryant and the Cowboys choking up another win and other various hijinks.
Wouldn't be the Cowboys without all the added drama.
Indeed.
Okay. Matthew Postins, thanks very much, as always, for giving us your take on the Cowboys' loss today.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
Cowboys lose to Detroit 31-30. This is a Rattle and Hum Sports podcast. Thanks very much for listening. I'm Brian Houston. We'll talk to you next time.